With that, Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback, is joining us now. So you tell me, if Mike Tomlin bails on a high-maintenance player, the history shows you they disappear into the wilderness. Bryant, the wide receiver, was great. He's gone. He disappears. Deontay Johnson. So it's just, if Warren Buffett tells you to sell a stock, sell the stock. If Kyle Shanahan doesn't like a quarterback, I wouldn't go buy him. I think the Steelers told you this guy is a handful. Were you surprised by the move?
A little bit, just at the timing. I know he was available before the draft, but I thought once they got past the draft, maybe they would bite the bullet and go with him for the rest of the year. Now, there's certainly a lot of reasons for them to move on right now. He is to some degree redundant with DK Metcalf, which, they're both ex-receivers. They're both down the field targets. And I think if you take that into account, Colin, one thing you do have to consider is if this guy was frustrated with the direction of the offense or his role in the offense over the last couple of years, where's that going to be if you get to October and November and now all of a sudden you've got life-changing money on the line? Is that going to get better or is that going to get worse? I'd say it probably gets worse, So I don't think the Steelers thought this is a bad-hearted guy. There's certainly not like a host of off-field issues that you're dealing with him, but I do think they looked at a player who, because they weren't going to pay him at the level he probably wants to be paid, could wind up being a problem for them as they try to pursue a championship this year and try to pursue a certain quarterback as well. And this is a chance for them to get the pick they would probably get in a comp pick a year earlier than they would have gotten it. And now they clear the decks and maybe they make a move for another veteran receiver. They really like Calvin Austin. They got Roman Wilson, who they took in the third round last year. And, it's a risk, but it's a logical, calculated risk.
Okay, so here's the other thing. CeeDee Lamb and Dak, that a lot of targets. And CeeDee Lamb, even when targeted the most, still complains about looks. I mean, is he going to be okay getting 40% of his targets cut?
That to me, Colin, is like why Brian Schottenheimer is a really important figure here. This is what you've put at the doorstep for your first year head coach, and how is that going to be handled? And, it's something we won't really know until we get to the fall. It's really easy for everybody to hold hands and sing Kumbaya in May and June, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of that. It's more difficult when, you're playing for playoff position in October and November, and maybe the best thing for the team is to keep feeding the ball to CeeDee Lamb, and the best thing for the team is for George Pickens to be a decoy. But again, it's the same sort of dynamic I was talking about with the Steelers. Like George Pickens, if he's not signed long-term at that point, could be worried about his payday. And his history has been that he's had trouble controlling his emotions and his frustrations when he doesn't like the direction of the offense or his role within it. So again, nothing like horrible here. Like you're going to have like this, this guy's going to tear your team apart. But I think there is a reality to all of this that's going to have to be managed early. And I think there's going to have to be a lot of clear communication. And I think a lot of this falls at the feet of the new head coach, who, Shotty's got a great personality. I think he'll do a great job building a culture there. One of his first jobs now is to make sure that everything is clear with the receiver room as to the roles that they're going to play, how that could play out over the course of the year. So there aren't a lot of surprises, or there aren't at least a lot of things that you haven't already forecasted on the plate of those two guys.
So I thought your reporting on Shedeur was the best out there, Shedeur Sanders. I think a lot of people just didn't want to be critical of Deion Sanders because he's popular in the media, and you were very upfront about it. Your reporting was great. I tend to think by Thanksgiving he'll just potentially be the best quarterback they have, and the fans will be clamoring for him because it's not a very good team and they'll be losing games. Give me the latest report you have on the quarterback situation in Cleveland, Albert.
Yeah, I think the spring's going to be really important, the next 5 or 6 weeks, because you have in today's NFL a limited number of reps that can go around in May and June, and then a limited amount of reps that you have for the summer. And this isn't just about having a quarterback derby. It's about a team full of veteran players, proud veteran players like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward that have designs on getting back to the playoffs. They got there 2 years ago. So a good chunk of training camp is going to have to be about, okay, who's our quarterback and how do we build around them and how do we build some momentum in the summer so we can hit the ground running when we get to the fall. And it's easy to do when you have two quarterbacks competing for snaps. It's more difficult when you're trying to get time for all four of them, And so I think, when you're looking at where you're at in the spring, it's going to be which veteran looks better, Joe Flacco versus Kenny Pickett. And how do the two rookies look? And not only are the rookies ready to compete to be a starter, but are either of the rookies ready to be a backup? That's going to be a big part of the equation too, because that's going to affect how many quarterbacks you keep. The guarantees in Flacco and Pickett's deals are almost identical. So the cost for walking away from either of those guys would be the same. And you generally don't cut a third-round pick, but this is an unusual situation where you've got another guy at his position that you took in the fifth round. So it's complicated in just about every way. I would expect that one of the two veterans will probably be the week one starter. And then, like you said, like so much of either of the rookies finding a way onto the field will be, did they do enough in the spring to get meaningful reps in the summer?
Yeah.
Did they do enough in the summer to prove themselves as viable options? And then if one of the veterans doesn't play well or the team doesn't play well, does that opportunity present itself when you get to the later parts of the season?
Okay, so it's funny about Aaron Rodgers. I read a story. This could have been you as well. And I think this is actually smart. I had said before the draft, Aaron should watch Kirk Cousins and not make a move until after the draft. And when Pittsburgh went out and got Will Howard, it's like, okay, that's a backup. That is clearly a prospect, a project. Then there's a story out that Aaron is waiting for the schedule to be released, and I actually defended him. And I don't know if it's you. I think I've been reading so much stuff on this, and my take is Peyton Manning and Kirk Cousins, they loved 1 o'clock windows. It drove Peyton crazy when he was dotted all on Thursday night and Monday night.
Yeah.
And so what do you make of, there's a story out there about that. I kind of buy it. What do you make of it?
Well, we know they're going to Dublin, right?
Yes,
so I don't know how Aaron feels about visiting Ireland, but if that's something he's wanted to do, that opportunity will be there for this with the Steelers. So we know that that's going to be on their schedule. Look, like the Steelers are a premier franchise. I would think that they're going to have a fair amount of primetime games, regardless of whether or not Aaron makes a decision between now and the schedule release next week. They're one of those teams with the Cowboys and the Packers that are always going to be in prime time plenty. I actually think, Colin, I think, really what this is about as much as anything else is Aaron taking his time. And I think we can all respect, what he said about this being a personal situation that's held some things up. The Steelers are trying to be respectful of it too. Then I actually think a decent sized chunk of this whole thing is that the Steelers and Aaron both know that if he were to have signed like 3 or 4 weeks ago, what are we all talking about now? Why isn't he at the off-season program yet?
Right.
Then OTA is starting in a couple weeks. Is he showing up? Then we get to minicamp. Oh my God, he's not at minicamp. They avoid all of this by not doing a deal now. Now, I think the risk for the Steelers, of course, and not pushing it is that he could change his mind. He could retire. There could be another opportunity that opens up somewhere else that could be more appealing to him. But I the sense I've gotten to this point is that he and the Steelers are on the same page. The schedule release thing's kind of interesting, and maybe that could affect his thinking. I'm just not sure this thing is that fragile where the schedule going one way or the other could really make or break whether or not he's a Steeler this year.
Okay. I could ask you about some other stuff, but that's good. Hey, by the way, you're a Buckeye, and I respect that.
Uh-huh.
I think J.J. McCarthy's closer to Jackson Dart than Jaden Daniels. I think there's a history that shows guys that come from power programs that don't play from behind. Ohio State quarterbacks, they don't play from behind. They play with stacked rosters, and they're not asked to win games. They're often asked not to screw it up. I'm not a J.J. McCarthy guy. I was much more, even though Bo Nix didn't have a lot of deficits, Bo Nix from Auburn to Oregon had 5 different coordinators, and he was asked to do a ton. J.J. McCarthy was asked to hand the ball off with a 17-3 lead in the first quarter. Minnesota, what do you really hear about this? They wanted Sam Darnold.
He made a bunch of throws that annoyed me.
What?
I know that.
I want be totally honest.
Here's what I would say. Like, I think he played really good in big games at Michigan. I do think, like, to your point, that the lack of, like, the massive amount of attempts and the lack of time played when you're playing from behind, the lack of third and longs because of the great run game that he had there, it limits his exposure and the NFL's exposure to a lot of the things that separate good quarterbacks from great quarterbacks. There are a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that can play in 2nd and 5, that can play in 3rd and 2. There are fewer that can play when they're down by 17 and the pass rushers have their ears pinned back. There are fewer that can operate in an efficient way when it's 3rd and 14. So we have less evidence of J.J. McCarthy doing that because of how good the team around him was at Michigan. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but it's something that you're projecting. And obviously the Vikings were robbed of getting to test him a lot of different ways because of the injury last year. So they're projecting a little bit too. Now, we've been through everything that he went through. He had a lot of ups and downs going through the rehab and, with the weight loss and everything else. I've been told, and Kevin O'Connell said this to me a couple of weeks ago, that he's in a really good place. His weight's back up.
All right.
He is, I think, in a better place than he was 3, 4, 5 months ago, and has been in the facility every single day since the season ended.
Okay.
What will that add up to? We'll see. Because like you said, there's still so many things that you are projecting, because there are a lot of things that, because of how good the team he played with at Michigan was, you are projecting with him.
All right. Yeah, by the way, final season in college, games with 30 or more pass attempts. Bo Nix 10, J.J. McCarthy 1.
Yep, and that's it. That's it. I mean, like that. It's a projection. It's hard. I hate to say this, but this is sort of what like hurt Brady when he was coming out of Michigan. I'm not making that comparison.
No, it's true.
It is. Like, Brady was playing with Jeff Backus and Steve Hutchinson and David Terrell and Marquise Walker and Anthony Thomas and a stout defense with first-round picks. Like, sometimes you have to make Peyton Manning had some of that at Tennessee, So, yes, there's definitely a projection. And again, like, you have to to be a great quarterback in the NFL, you have to be able to play from behind. You have to be able to play on 3rd and long. And because of how good the team around him was at Michigan, he didn't have to do that a ton, which again means that you're hoping that he winds up getting there as a pro.
Good stuff, Albert Breer. Good seeing you, buddy.